The ladder shook under my boots as I climbed the final 20 feet to the tower cab. Rowan Ashford, 3 years of fire lookout experience, and I still felt my stomach drop every time I made this climb. The metal rungs were slick with morning dew, and the forest stretched endlessly below me like a green ocean. "Home sweet home," I muttered, reaching the platform. The cab door opened with its familiar squeak. 14 by 14 feet of glass and steel, my summer residence. The Osborne firefinder sat in the center like a mechanical compass, its brass edges catching the early sunlight. Windows on all sides gave me a perfect view of the Cascade National Forest. 75 feet above the ground, I could see for miles in every direction. I dropped my pack and pulled out the radio. Channel 7, always Channel 7. The static crackled to life. "Base, this is Rowan at Tower 19, beginning my shift." "Copy that, Rowan. Glad you're back for another season. Remember to check in every 4 hours." I smiled. Sarah Martinez had been the voice in my radio for 3 years now. She knew I was reliable. "Will do, Base." "Any special instructions this year?" A pause. Longer than usual. "Actually, yes. We've had some incidents in your sector. Nothing serious, but we need you to follow the protocols exactly this season. No exceptions." I frowned. "What kind of incidents?" "Just follow the rules, Rowan. They're posted on the wall like always. Base out." The radio went quiet. I looked at the familiar wall where the safety protocols hung. The same 5 rules I'd seen every season, written in neat block letters. 1. Never leave the tower between sunset and sunrise. 2. If you hear 3 knocks, do not answer until the 4th. 3. Keep the radio on Channel 7 at all times. 4. If the firefinder spins on its own, record the direction it stops. 5. Never look directly at the tree line during a full moon. I'd always thought some of these rules were strange. The knocking rule especially seemed odd for a tower in the middle of nowhere. But I'd never questioned them. Rules kept you alive in the forest. They kept you safe. My first season here, 3 years ago, I'd asked the previous supervisor about the rules. Old Pete Garrison had been running towers for 20 years before he retired. When I brought up the knocking protocol, his face had gone serious. "You follow every single one of those rules, Rowan," he'd said. "Don't matter if they seem silly. Don't matter if you think you know better. These mountains have been here longer than any of us, and they got their own way of doing things. But who would be knocking on a door 75 feet up?" Pete had looked past me, staring at something I couldn't see. "Wrong question, kid. Right question is, what happens if you answer too early?" He'd never explained what he meant. 3 months later, Pete had a heart attack while fishing. His replacement, Director Hayes, had a completely different attitude about the rules. Modern, scientific, dismissive of what he called old superstitions. The first week passed normally. I scanned the horizon for smoke, recorded weather data, and checked in with base every 4 hours. The isolation felt good after months in the city. No traffic, no deadlines, no people. Just me, the forest, and the endless sky. But something felt different this year. The forest seemed quieter than usual. In previous seasons, I'd gotten used to the constant background noise, birds calling, squirrels chattering, wind moving through the branches. This year, the silence was almost complete. Even the insects seemed subdued. On my 4th day, I mentioned it during my radio check. "Base, this is Tower 19. Have there been any reports of wildlife disturbance in this sector?" "Negative, Tower 19. What are you observing?" "It's more what I'm not observing. Very little animal activity. No bird calls for the past 2 days." A pause. "Could be natural migration patterns. Nothing to worry about." But I was worried. In 3 years of fire lookout work, I'd learned to trust my instincts. The forest was trying to tell me something, and I wasn't listening carefully enough. It was Tuesday morning when I first heard the knocking. I was updating my logbook, when 3 sharp raps echoed through the cab. Knock, knock, knock. The sound came from the door, clear and deliberate. My hand froze over the page. Rule number 2. If you hear 3 knocks, do not answer until the 4th. I sat perfectly still, listening. The forest below was quiet. No birds, no wind. Even the usual rustle of leaves had stopped. The silence pressed against my eardrums like cotton. I waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. No 4th knock came. I stood up carefully and looked out the windows. The forest stretched in all directions, unchanged. No hikers, no vehicles, no signs of life. My nearest neighbor was Tower 12, 15 miles north. Nobody could have climbed up here without me seeing them. I keyed the radio. Base, this is Tower 19. Did you send anyone to my location? Negative, Tower 19. You should be alone. Why? I hesitated. How do you explain that you heard knocking on a door 75 feet in the air? Never mind. False alarm. Copy that. Remember to follow the protocols, Rowan. That night, I made sure to be inside before sunset. I'd never paid much attention to rule number 1 before. The forest was safe, and I was experienced. But something about those 3 knocks had shaken me. I heated up a can of soup and watched the darkness creep between the trees. The full moon rose like a silver coin, turning the forest into a landscape of black and white. I made myself a cup of coffee and settled into my chair to read. The book was a thriller about a detective tracking a serial killer, but I found myself glancing out the windows every few pages. The tree line looked different in the moonlight. The shadows between the trees seemed deeper, more defined. They formed shapes that looked almost like figures standing just inside the forest edge. I caught myself staring and forced my eyes back to the book. Rule number 5. Never look directly at the tree line during a full moon. I'd always assumed that rule was about preserving night vision. Looking at bright moonlight could make it harder to spot distant fires. But now I wondered if there was another reason. I kept reading, but the words blurred together. My eyes kept drifting to the windows. The shadows between the trees definitely looked like people. Dozens of them standing motionless in the darkness, watching. I closed the book with a snap. This was ridiculous. I was a professional. I'd worked alone in the forest for 3 years without jumping at shadows. Literally. But when I looked out the window again, one of the shadows had moved closer. I grabbed my binoculars and focused on the tree line. Through the lenses, I could see it clearly. A figure in dark clothes standing at the edge of the forest. It was too far to make out details, but it was definitely human-shaped, and it was facing the tower. My hands shook as I lowered the binoculars. Rule number 5. Never look directly at the tree line during a full moon. But I'd already broken it. I'd looked. I'd seen. The figure raised one arm, waving. I stumbled backward, knocking over my coffee mug. The hot liquid splashed across the floor, filling the cab with the smell of burnt coffee. I grabbed a towel and knelt to clean it up, keeping my back to the windows. When I finally looked up, the figure was gone. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my chair with the book open in my lap, listening to the forest. Every creak of the tower, every whisper of wind through the trees, every distant animal call made me jump. I kept the radio on, taking comfort in the occasional static bursts that proved I wasn't completely alone. Dawn came slowly, painting the forest in shades of gold and green. In the morning light, everything looked normal, peaceful, safe. I made fresh coffee and tried to convince myself that I'd imagined the figure in the trees. But when I opened my logbook to record the morning weather, I found something that made my blood freeze. Written in my own handwriting, in the entry for the previous night, were the words, "Movement observed in tree line. Figure identified. Protocol violation noted." I stared at the page. I had no memory of writing those words. The handwriting was definitely mine, but the ink was different, darker, and the words were written in a space I'd left blank. I flipped through the rest of the logbook. Every entry was normal, written in my usual blue ink. Only those 3 sentences were different, written in what looked like black ink I didn't even own. My hands trembled as I reached for the radio. "Base, this is Tower 19. I need to report a situation." Sarah's voice crackled through the static. "What kind of situation, Rowan?" "I think someone was here last night, in the forest, watching the tower." A long pause. "Did you follow the protocols?" I looked at the tree line, during the full moon. I saw someone standing there." Another pause, longer this time. "Rowan, you need to listen to me very carefully. The rules are there for a reason. They're not suggestions. They're not guidelines. They're the only thing keeping you safe." "Safe from what?" "From making the same mistake as your predecessor." The radio went dead. I called base 3 more times, but no one answered. The silence stretched on, broken only by the distant call of a hawk circling somewhere below. I spent the day researching. The tower had detailed records going back 30 years. Most lookouts worked multiple seasons, returning year after year. But the person before me, Marcus Webb, had only worked 1 season. His final log entry was dated exactly 1 year ago. Equipment functioning normally. Weather clear. No fires reported. Personal note: the rules don't make sense, but I'm starting to understand why they exist. Some things are better left alone. There was no explanation for why he'd left, no forwarding address, no contact information. It was as if he'd simply vanished. I radioed base again that evening. This time, a different voice answered. A man I didn't recognize. "This is base. Go ahead, Tower 19. "Where's Sarah?" "Sarah Martinez." "No one by that name works here. Are you reporting a fire?" "I've been checking in with Sarah for 3 years. She's the communications coordinator." "I've been the communications coordinator for 5 years. There's no Sarah Martinez in our system." The radio went dead again. I sat in the growing darkness, staring at the silent radio. Either everyone at base was playing an elaborate prank, or something was very wrong. Neither option made me feel better. The sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of red and purple. I locked the tower door and checked the windows. The forest below was already deep in shadow, but I could see the tree line clearly. No figures this time, no movement, just trees and darkness. I made dinner and tried to act normal. The rules were simple enough. Stay inside after dark. Don't answer until the 4th knock. Keep the radio on channel 7. Record any unusual movement of the firefinder. Don't look at the tree line during a full moon. Simple, logical, safe. But as the night deepened, I began to understand that the rules weren't just about safety. They were about survival. And I was starting to realize that I might have already broken too many of them. The knocking started again at 11:47 p.m. Knock, knock, knock. I sat frozen in my chair, listening. The knocks came from the door just like before. Deliberate, patient, waiting. I counted the seconds. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. Then, soft as a whisper, came the 4th knock. The door handle turned. I lunged for the door and slammed the lock home just as the handle finished turning. The door shook once, testing the lock, then went still. I pressed my back against the wood and tried to control my breathing. Someone was on the platform outside. Someone who knew the rules. Someone who understood that 4 knocks meant I had to answer. "Rowan?" A voice called through the door. Familiar, friendly. "Rowan, it's Marcus. Open up." Marcus Webb, the previous lookout, the one who'd vanished. "Marcus is gone," I said, my voice shaking. "He left a year ago." "I never left, Rowan. I've been here the whole time, following the rules, waiting for someone to join me." The voice was wrong. Too flat, too calm, like someone reading from a script. Where have you been living? In the forest. There are others here. Lots of others. All the lookouts who came before. We take care of each other now. I crept to the window and looked down. A figure stood on the platform in the darkness. Tall, wearing clothes that might have been a ranger uniform. But I couldn't make out the face. The shadows seemed to cling to it like a mask. The rules keep us safe, the figure continued, but only if we follow them exactly. You've been breaking them, Rowan. Looking at the tree line, questioning the protocols. That's dangerous. What happens if I keep breaking them? Then you disappear, like all the others, like Marcus Webb. The figure raised its head, and I glimpsed something that made me step back from the window. The face was wrong, too pale, too smooth, like a photograph that had been left in the sun too long. Open the door, Rowan. Let me show you how to follow the rules properly. I grabbed the radio and switched to channel 7. Base, this is Tower 19. Emergency. Someone is on my platform. I need immediate assistance. Static. Then, impossibly, Marcus's voice came through the radio. Base doesn't exist anymore, Rowan. There's only us, the ones who follow the rules, the ones who stay in the forest forever. I dropped the radio and backed away from the door. The handle was turning again, slowly, testing the lock. The metal creaked under the pressure. The rules are simple, Marcus continued. Stay inside after dark. We know you broke that rule on your first day. Don't answer until the 4th knock. You did that correctly tonight. Keep the radio on channel 7. You're doing that now. Record any unusual movement of the firefinder. I looked at the firefinder. It was spinning slowly, the brass needle turning in lazy circles. I'd never seen it move without wind. I grabbed my logbook and wrote down the direction it stopped. Due north. Good, Marcus said. One more rule, Rowan. Never look directly at the tree line during a full moon. You broke that rule 2 nights ago. That's when you saw me. I saw someone waving, in the forest. You saw what you weren't supposed to see, the others. All the lookouts who came before. We've been waiting for you to join us. The door handle stopped turning. Footsteps moved across the platform, slow and deliberate. I heard the creak of metal as someone climbed down the ladder. I ran to the window and looked down. The figure was descending the tower, moving with unnatural smoothness. No rushing, no urgency. Just patient, mechanical progress. When it reached the ground, it walked into the forest and disappeared among the trees. I spent the rest of the night barricaded in the tower, pushing furniture against the door and windows. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow seemed to move. When dawn finally came, I was exhausted and shaking. The radio crackled to life at 8 a.m. Tower 19, this is Base. Please respond. I grabbed the radio, desperate to hear a normal human voice. Base, this is Tower 19. I need immediate evacuation. Someone was here last night, on the platform. Rowan, this is Director Hayes. I've been reviewing your reports. You've been under a lot of stress. Isolation can play tricks on the mind. This isn't stress. Someone climbed up here. Someone who knew the rules. The rules are safety protocols, Rowan. They're designed to keep lookouts healthy and alert. The isolation can cause hallucinations, paranoia, sleep deprivation. It's more common than you think. Then why did Marcus Webb disappear? A pause. Marcus Webb completed his assignment and returned to civilian life. He works for the Forestry Service in Oregon now. I can give you his contact information if you'd like. That's not possible. He was here last night. He told me he never left. Rowan, I'm going to send a helicopter to pick you up. You need medical attention and psychological evaluation. This job isn't for everyone. No. I surprised myself with the firmness in my voice. I'm not leaving, not yet. That's not your choice anymore. The helicopter will arrive at 1400 hours. Be ready. The radio went dead. I sat in the morning sunlight, trying to make sense of what was happening. Either I was losing my mind, or something in the forest was playing with my perception of reality. Neither option was comforting. But I wasn't going to run. I'd taken this job because I was good at it, because I could handle the isolation and responsibility, because I wasn't afraid of the forest. I opened my logbook and began to write. If something happened to me, at least there would be a record. Day 12. Unusual activity continues. Visitor claiming to be Marcus Webb appeared on platform at 23:47 hours. Voice familiar but physical appearance inconsistent with human norms. Firefinder displayed spontaneous rotation, stopping at due north bearing. Radio communications with base becoming inconsistent. Protocols being followed despite growing difficulty in understanding their true purpose. I paused, pen hovering over the page. Then I wrote one more line. Beginning to suspect the rules are not what they seem. The helicopter arrived exactly at 2 p.m. I heard the rotors long before I saw it, a distant thumping that grew louder as it approached. Through the windows, I watched it circle the tower once before landing in the clearing below. 2 people got out, a pilot and a woman in a ranger uniform. They looked up at the tower and waved. Normal, human, real. I grabbed my pack and headed for the door. Time to leave. Time to get back to civilization and figure out what was happening. But as I reached for the door handle, I stopped. The firefinder was spinning again. Faster this time, the needle whirring around the center post like a confused compass. I watched it for 30 seconds before it stopped, pointing due north. I opened the logbook and recorded the direction. Then I noticed something else. The entry I'd written that morning was gone. The page was blank except for routine weather data. My hands shook as I flipped through the book. Every unusual entry was gone. Every mention of strange sounds, mysterious figures, or broken rules had vanished. The logbook looked exactly like it should have after a normal, uneventful assignment. Someone shouted from below. The woman was calling my name, asking if I was okay. I looked down at her and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. She looked exactly like the voice I'd known as Sarah Martinez. I keyed the radio. Base, this is Tower 19. I need confirmation on the identity of my pickup team. Tower 19, this is Base. Ranger Martinez and Pilot Johnson are authorized to transport you to headquarters. I thought there was no Sarah Martinez in your system. I never said that, Rowan. Please proceed to the landing zone immediately. I looked at the helicopter again. Sarah Martinez was still waving, her smile patient and friendly. Exactly as I'd imagined her during 3 years of radio conversations. Behind her, just at the edge of the forest, I could see figures standing between the trees. Dozens of them, all wearing ranger uniforms, all watching the tower. I understood now. The rules weren't meant to protect me from the forest. They were meant to protect the forest from me. From what I might see, what I might report, what I might remember. The helicopter crew wasn't here to rescue me. They were here to make sure I followed the final rule, the one that wasn't written on the wall. Never tell anyone what you've seen. I picked up the radio one last time. Base, this is Tower 19. I'm going to stay for the full season. I understand the rules now. That's not possible, Rowan. You're showing signs of psychological distress. You need immediate medical attention. I'm showing signs of understanding, and I choose to stay. I turned off the radio and watched the helicopter crew below. They talked for a few minutes, then climbed back into the aircraft. The rotors spun up, and they lifted off into the afternoon sky. But they didn't leave. They circled the tower once, twice, 3 times. Then they landed again, this time in a different clearing. Farther from the tower but still visible through the trees. They weren't leaving without me. As the sun set, I prepared for another night in the tower. I locked the door and checked the windows. The firefinder sat motionless in the center of the room. The radio remained silent on Channel 7. Outside, the forest was full of movement. figures walking between the trees, always just visible enough to be noticed. The helicopter crew had joined them, their uniforms blending with the shadows. At 11:47 p.m., the knocking started again. Knock, knock, knock. I sat in my chair and waited. The fourth knock came exactly 60 seconds later. The door handle turned. This time, I didn't fight it. I stood up and walked to the door. My hand trembled as I reached for the lock. "Rowan?" Marcus's voice called through the door. "Are you ready to follow the rules?" "All of them. All of them. Forever." I opened the door. Marcus Webb stood on the platform, exactly as I'd seen him before. Tall, pale, wearing a ranger uniform that looked like it had been pressed yesterday. Behind him, Sarah Martinez smiled and waved. "The rules are simple," Marcus said. "Stay in the forest, watch the tower, keep the others safe, help them understand when their time comes." What happened to the real Marcus Webb? He learned the rules, just like you're learning them now, just like all the others. I looked down at the helicopter crew waiting at the base of the tower. They looked up at me with patient expressions. Behind them, dozens of other figures stood between the trees, all former lookouts, all following the rules. Do I have a choice? You always have a choice, Rowan. You can fight the rules and disappear forever, or you can accept them and stay in the forest. Help us keep the next lookout safe. I thought about Director Hayes, waiting for my return, about the real Sarah Martinez, wherever she was, about the families of all the missing lookouts who would never know what happened to their loved ones. What if I refuse? Then you become like the others you've seen, the ones who broke too many rules. They exist, but they don't really live. They're just echoes. I looked at the logbook on the table. The blank pages where my real experiences should have been recorded. The stories that would never be told. "I'll stay," I said. "I'll follow the rules." Marcus smiled. It was the first genuine expression I'd seen from him. "Good. The next lookout arrives tomorrow. Her name is Elena Riverbend. She's young, eager, experienced. She'll do well if we help her understand." What do I tell her? The same thing I told you. The rules are there for a reason. Follow them exactly. No exceptions. I nodded and stepped onto the platform. The forest stretched below us, dark and endless. My new home. My new responsibility. As we climbed down the tower, I thought about Elena Riverbend. Tomorrow, she would climb these same rungs. She would see the same 5 rules posted on the wall. She would think she understood what they meant. But eventually, she would hear the knocking. She would see the figures in the tree line. She would break the rules and learn the truth. The descent felt longer than usual. Each rung of the ladder seemed to pull me further from my old life, and deeper into something I didn't fully understand yet. Marcus walked beside me, his footsteps making no sound on the metal platform. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "Time works differently in the forest," he said. "Days blend together. Seasons cycle past. But we're always here. Always watching. Always ready." "Do you ever miss your old life?" Marcus stopped walking and looked at me. In the moonlight, his face seemed more human than it had before. "I missed it at first. My apartment in Seattle. My girlfriend Jennifer. My job at the forestry office. But that life feels like a dream now. This is real. This is purpose." We reached the bottom of the tower. The helicopter crew was waiting, but they looked different now. Their uniforms were clean and pressed, but something about their posture suggested they'd been standing there for much longer than a few hours. Days, maybe? Weeks. "How many of us are there?" I asked. Sarah Martinez stepped forward. 47 current active members. We staff 12 towers across the region. Some of us work in the main office, handling communications and paperwork. Others maintain the trails and equipment. Everyone has a role. "What about the families?" the people who wonder what happened to us. They receive explanations, said a new voice. A tall man in a supervisor's uniform emerged from the tree line. Medical emergencies, job transfers, personal decisions to start new lives elsewhere. The paperwork is always perfect. The stories are always believable. I recognized the voice. Director Hayes. But like the others, he looked somehow both familiar and wrong. His features were correct, but the expression was too calm, too knowing. You're all still doing your jobs, I realized. Just not the way the outside world thinks. The Forest Service continues to function, Hayes said. Fires are spotted and reported. Weather data is collected. Trails are maintained. We simply serve a different purpose now. Marcus handed me a small notebook. Your new logbook. Real entries this time. Truth instead of weather reports and fire sightings. I opened it. The first page was already filled with handwriting I didn't recognize. Day 1. Rowan Ashford has joined the community. Transition proceeding normally. Elena Riverbend scheduled to arrive at Tower 19 tomorrow morning. Standard protocol will be followed. Who wrote this? Your predecessor, Sarah said. The lookout who worked Tower 19 before you. He's been tracking your progress and preparing for this transition. Where is he now? She pointed toward the forest. Patrol duty, making sure no hikers or campers wander too close to active tower sites during transition periods. He'll introduce himself when you're ready. And when that happened, I would be there to help her understand. To explain that the rules weren't about fire safety or emergency procedures. They were about something much more important. They were about keeping the forest's secrets safe. The helicopter crew met us at the bottom of the tower. Sarah Martinez handed me a new radio and a fresh logbook. Welcome to the team, Rowan, she said. Your first shift starts tomorrow. We walked deeper into the forest than I'd ever gone before. The trees grew thicker, older, their branches forming a canopy so dense that almost no moonlight reached the ground. But somehow I could see perfectly. My new companions moved with confidence through the darkness, following paths that were invisible to my untrained eyes. The forest takes care of us, Marcus explained as we walked. Better vision, better hearing, perfect navigation. We become part of it, and it becomes part of us. After 20 minutes of walking, we reached a clearing I'd never seen from the tower. Small cabins ringed the open space, each one neat and well-maintained. Smoke rose from several chimneys, and warm light glowed behind curtained windows. It looked like a normal camping area, except for the complete silence. Home, Sarah said. You'll stay in cabin 7. It belonged to your predecessor until tonight. Where is he going? Deeper into the forest. There are other communities further in. Lookouts who joined us years ago, decades ago. They help coordinate the larger operations. She led me to a small wooden cabin that looked like it had been built yesterday. Inside, I found a comfortable bed, a wood stove, and shelves lined with books. Personal belongings that obviously weren't mine. Photographs of people I didn't recognize, clothes that wouldn't fit me, a coffee mug with "World's Best Dad" printed on the side. These belonged to James Morrison, Tower 19, 2019 to 2020. He'll collect them when he's ready. For now, use whatever you need. I sat on the bed and tried to process everything that had happened. This morning, I'd been a normal fire lookout dealing with what I thought might be psychological stress. Tonight, I was apparently a member of a secret community of former Forest Service employees who lived permanently in the wilderness. How do you handle supplies? Food, medicine, equipment? The same way we always did. Requisitions, supply drops, maintenance schedules. The paperwork gets filed. The supplies get delivered. We simply intercept them before they reach the official destinations. Marcus appeared in the doorway. You should rest. Tomorrow will be challenging. Elena arrives at 0800 hours. She'll be eager to start her new assignment. What do I tell her? Nothing at first. Let her settle in. Follow the normal radio protocols. Answer her questions about weather procedures and fire spotting. Be helpful and professional. When do I mention the rules? When she asks. She'll notice them on the wall eventually. When she does, just say they're standard safety protocols. Don't elaborate. Don't explain. Let her draw her own conclusions. Sarah sat in the room's single chair. The process usually takes 2 to 3 weeks. First, she'll think the rules are strange but harmless. Then she'll start noticing things that don't quite make sense. Small inconsistencies, odd radio communications. Finally, she'll break one of the rules and see something she can't explain. And then you help her understand. The same way Marcus helped you. The same way someone helped Marcus. The same way it's been done for 30 years. I lay back on the bed and stared at the wooden ceiling. How many people know the truth? In the real forestry service, I mean. More than you'd think, Marcus said. Directors, supervisors, communications coordinators. They're not part of our community, but they understand the arrangement. They know that certain positions have a high turnover rate. They know that certain sectors require special protocols. And they're okay with that? They're okay with keeping the forest safe. However, that needs to happen. A soft knock came at the door. Sarah opened it to reveal a young woman I didn't recognize, wearing a standard ranger uniform. Rowan, this is Kelly Winters. She was the lookout at Tower 12 until last month. Kelly smiled and waved. I wanted to welcome you to the community. I know it's a lot to take in all at once. How long have you been here? 3 weeks. I'm still adjusting, but it's not as bad as you might think. Actually, it's better in a lot of ways. No paperwork deadlines, no performance reviews, no dealing with tourists who think they know more about forest safety than you do. She was right. Already, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. No stress, no deadlines, no pressure to be anywhere other than exactly where I was. The hardest part, Kelly continued, is letting go of your old life. But eventually you realize that this is your real life. Everything before was just preparation. As the others left me alone in the cabin, I thought about what Kelly had said. My apartment in the city, my few friends, my routine job anxiety. All of it seemed distant and unimportant now. This community, this purpose, this connection to something larger than myself. It felt more real than anything I'd experienced before. I looked up at the tower one last time. Tower 19, my summer home for 3 years. Tomorrow, it would belong to someone else. Someone who didn't know the rules yet. But they would learn, just like I had learned. Just like all the others had learned. The rules were there for a reason. They kept the forest safe. They kept the secrets buried. They kept the real world from knowing what happened to the ones who disappeared. And now it was my job to make sure the next lookout understood that. Some rules are meant to be broken, but not these rules. Never these rules. These rules are forever.